Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday morning meditation practice. I'm going to have us do a mostly silent meditation this morning. I'm going to just lead us through the very preliminary part of getting ready for the practice using the original words of the Buddha from the Satipatthana Sutta. So I welcome all of you this morning, and hopefully you can get into a good position for your sitting with the back straight and without distraction, be able to center your mind and body. So I'll ring the gong 3 times to begin and once at the end in 30 minutes. Sending our awareness to the breath, ardent, alert, mindful, putting aside our wants and worries about the daily life. Always mindful, I breathe in. Mindful, I breathe out. Breathing in long, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, I breathe out long. Or breathing in short, I breathe in short. Or breathing out short, I breathe out short. Breathing in, sensitive to the entire body. Breathing out, sensitive to the entire body. Breathing in, calming the bodily formations, the breath. Breathing out, calming the bodily formations, the breath. Very gradually, you can wiggle your fingers and toes. Bring your awareness back. And at your own pace, open your eyes and return to your space, refreshed. I'm very happy to talk with you today. This is our last Dharma talk before the winter retreat. And our Dharma talks will continue after the end of February. However, this is a time when all of us will be going deeper into our practice, and we will be able to hopefully make progress in having a right view, a right intention, using right speech, doing right action, having a right livelihood, and in our concentration practice, to be able to have a good effort, and right mindfulness, right concentration, which will lead us back into a higher level of right view and right intention. So this is the time where we get to practice more deeply, not wandering out so much, being careful, which is even more important now during our time of COVID, to be careful as when we come out of our retreat, hopefully everyone will be able to have the option of becoming vaccinated and safe again. Then we can resume returning to our monastery. So today I'm going to talk about mastering the mind. So if Francesca will be so kind as to put up some slides, I will talk with you about mastering the mind. This is what our process is really when we go and we search for a master. You know, the master is the master of their own mind, not the master of our mind. The master can show us some ways of being able to learn how to master our mind so that we can do it ourselves. This is one of the distinguishing features about Buddhism, is that Buddhism is about attaining our own level of higher wisdom, not just relying on others, but being able to do it ourselves as well. So the word we might use for this mastering of the mind is a phrase called in Chinese, Xin Zizai. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this as well, so that we understand that this mastery of the mind, chitta vashita in the Sanskrit, and here we are in Pali, and then we have the term Sinsasai. So for those of you who are familiar with the Heart Sutra, you know this term Satsai already. You may not be aware, but in the Heart Sutra, the Guan Yin is given a title, Guan Satsai Pusa Bodhisattva, Guan Yin is Avalokiteshvara, the one who listens to the sounds of suffering in the world with great compassion. This is a photo of the Guan Yin from the St. Louis Art Museum, fully life-size. It's very beautiful. And in the next slide, you see here she's advanced. This is a picture of the one from the Nelson Atkins Museum in Kansas City, right? So this term tsatsai is actually refers to a royal pose or an easy pose. The Guan Yin is open, ready to listen to the sounds of suffering in the world. So very generous, very caring, very compassionate, not sitting in deep equanimity, but open, ready to go into action. So this term tsatsai is actually means that the Guan Yin has a special power. Actually, there are 10 tsatsai powers, but this particular power is the power, Sin tsatsai is the power to master one's own mind. So this is the meaning of the term. So we see it in that. So now we're on question number 1. That's fine. What is the meaning of mastering the mind? We should start with what is the mind? So we can juggle here 3 interconnected puzzle pieces. Now the first called the 4 insights, the second called the 8 consciousnesses, and the third called the 4 bhaga, or mind divisions. So when we try to understand the mind, there are different ways that we can look at the mind and try to understand what it means. So if we go to the next slide, we see the first part, which is called the 4 insights. The first insight is learning how to observe. We learn observing, accepting, letting go, and awakening. The first one, observing. So in order to have a good right view, we need first to be able to observe. As we begin our mindfulness meditation, for example, the first principle is to train the mind to observe the sense data without superimposing right and wrong and good and bad, desirable, undesirable, all of these dualities that we superimpose onto our experience that take us actually away from the direct experience. Now we're just thinking more about what we've imputed. Of course, there are very important exceptions to this in terms of right and wrong, namely the moral precepts where we refrain from killing, particularly people, and refrain from stealing, and refrain from sexual misconduct and harsh, false, divisive speech, idle speech, and we refrain from intoxicants that dull the mind. So these exceptions, other than these exceptions, we really observe our experience from the point of view of non-duality to the best of our ability, non-imputing. As we go to the next slide, we can see that we observe things. We do notice whether they are pleasant or unpleasant. We have these sensations in our body that registers in each waking moment, whether we're experiencing something pleasant or unpleasant. Of course, the most extreme being sensations of strong physical pleasure or pain. And we train ourselves to observe these sensations without craving, namely wanting more pleasure or aversion, hating any discomfort that the body has, or attempts to numb out, for example, to use intoxicants to numb ourselves from these experiences. So we learn just how to observe our sensations. Also, when the mind calms down enough, a little hint, when we go a little bit deeper, we begin to recognize, oh, all of my experiences, all of the experiences that everybody has are really impermanent. Whether they're physical objects, our body, our sensations, our perceptions and thoughts about things, even our mental patterns, and even our consciousness itself, all impermanent. So when we observe, we see this from the point of view of sense data and also understanding this principle of impermanence. So we go to the next slide. So then after establishing a good basis for observing, we add on to this accepting. Accepting is not something passive that we do. We just say, oh, this is happening to me. I'm just going to lay down and just let this experience walk over me. No, it's not passive. It's Mahatma Gandhi said, the principles of are not passive. They're peaceful. Acceptance, about recognizing the difficulties and imperfections, are part of everyone's worldly experience. Moreover, what would things be like if they were perfect? We would have nothing to do. We would have nothing to improve. We wouldn't have any purpose. We wouldn't have any goals. We wouldn't need to be creative. So accepting is part of this experience of recognizing this dissatisfaction. And then, of course, when we're in a situation where we can do something about it, we act on it. We do something to be of benefit. But we recognize that dissatisfaction and distress are important steps, important part of maturing. As we go to the next slide. You also learn to accept things with actual appreciation and gratitude. We become aware that our distress is actually something to befriend, to embrace, to appreciate, to be grateful for. It's not that we are trying to create more distress in our lives, no. We probably do a good job of that already. The realization is that when we embrace this distress, it provides us with an opportunity to advance in our technology, in our medicine, our art, design, our relationships with family, but it also provides us with the opportunity to advance in terms of our own practice, in terms of learning to master the mind, to develop the right view. So this is the accepting unsatisfactoriness and also learning to do this with gratitude and appreciation. In the next step, letting go. The first is to be able to let go of the 4 kinds of clinging. So this tendency of the mind to hold on to sense-based pleasure. The material world is going to make me a happy person. The clinging to views. Oh, my views are right and better than others, or vice versa. Thinking that rules and observances are the way to be able to attain enlightenment, and clinging to the belief of self-identity. This is me, this is mine, this is who I am. It's very difficult for us to stop this kind of grasping onto the world. As we go to the next slide, this letting go of clinging is something where we learn how to recognize that we have this tendency to say, I am this person, I am that person, I am married to so-and-so, I'm part of this family, I am a parent to many children. But when we do this too intensely, we run the risk of believing that that's all of who we are. And then when we lose this role, who are we as this person? I see this so much in my clinical practice of psychotherapy, where I see people who become divorced. Oh, they lose their identity. They've identified with this other person for so long, or they retire from their job. They don't know what to do because that's been their identity. So many things go on in people's lives where they attach to their identity. This becomes a real problem. As we go to the next slide, we can see that this habitual pattern of self-identity actually becomes what we call the ego self. And on a deeper level, learning how to recognize that we are part of an ecosystem. We're part of interconnected with this world of material objects, yes, molecules and atoms and energy patterns, but we're also interconnected emotionally with everyone. Each person actually that we meet, we don't realize it. We share 99.9% of our DNA with other beings. With monkeys, maybe 99.1%. With banana, 10%. We're all interconnected with each other. And once we realize this, we realize that we're really just all relatives in the same family. We should treat each other with preciousness and compassion and respect, instead of thinking to ourselves, oh, I'm more important than everybody else. I'm the main character in my own drama. Like a little finger that would stand up and say, I'm more important. I'm more important. I'm the center. I can live independently by myself. I'm not part of any body or hand. How silly that is. So when we learn to let go of that, this is very helpful. So when we go into awakening, this is another topic. I don't think we have time to go through all of this. So I'm going to just say that sometimes words not necessary. We can go on to the next picture. So this is a picture that I like to make diagrams. It's very helpful to my own mind to be able to make a diagram. So this is a fun diagram, and I very much enjoy doing this. So it's a picture of what it is that I've just talked about. So we go to the next slide, we have 8 consciousnesses. So in the 8 consciousnesses actually from the Yogacara system are really based on the original teachings of the Buddha, that we have a form, that's the body, and then we have, which is the rupa, the form, and then we have the nama, the parts that have to do with mentality, including feeling, perceptions, conceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. And if we go to the next slide, we can see that these are expanded in the Yogacara system to have to do with the 5 sense bases, the discriminating mind that takes the information from the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body and integrates that and adds to it its own conceptions. And then we have the 7th consciousness, which is what we call the self-referential consciousness, which is involved in this ego making, the self-making. And then the next part, the self is attached to this part called the storehouse consciousness, the alaya vijnana. And so this is a very deep topic that takes quite some time to really fully understand and flesh out. But basically, this is the view of the 8 consciousnesses. And if you go to the next slide here, these are described in great detail in Xuanzang's translation well, actually his work integrating the teachings and commentaries on Vasubandhu's 30 verses. If we go to the next slide, we can see the Changwei Sholan by and then the next slide here, the 8 consciousnesses, and we can go to the next one because this is just a review. This is a pictorial version here in color of the 8 consciousnesses. And then if we go actually the next slide, I think, oh, yes. So something about, I want to say about our senses. So I want to explain to you why it is that dogs love us so much, because they feel sorry for us. Their sense of smell is over 10,000 times better than ours, and they feel badly that we can't smell. We can't detect the true nature of things by their smell. And so their sense of smell is our sense of smell, and theirs is least mediated and most direct of all of our senses. And perhaps if we could smell each other better, we could stop a great deal of anger and violence in the world. Obviously, a lot of the dogs have figured this out, so we should be happy for them and treat them well. So this next slide here is the one that I think is the clearest one, an explanation of the 8 consciousnesses. And so when a person is practicing trying to master their mind, they begin to realize that as they observe their sense bases at the bottom, they begin to realize that what's happening is that their mind is discriminating between these different senses that we're getting. And as a result of this, thoughts and concepts are emerging in the mind, telling one thing from another, putting names on things. And then the next level of the mind, the self-referential mind, gets involved and begins to see, how does this involve me? How does all of this stuff affect me? So the me becomes very important. And then this me begins to look for a superpower that will somehow explain how all of these things fit together. And the person begins to realize, oh, maybe there's something else that's going on. In this case, not something bigger, but actually something very small within the consciousness that holds everything together. So this is, again, takes a long time for us to flush out. And when we studied this together some years ago with venerables from different groups of Foguan Shan, we spent years studying this particular topic. So this is something that we can just point to and say, this is very profound. So what does it mean to master the mind? So I have a definition that I came up with after some consideration, that mastering the mind is the ability of consciousness refined by mindfulness and concentration to direct the inner supervisor with wisdom and compassion, such that the inner supervisor is then able to direct the meta mind to correctly organize and process the sense data without craving or clinging. This is a long definition. And I've introduced some words here called the supervisor and the master of the mind. So I'm now going to go to the next slide, which has to do with self-observation, and talk about another way of looking at the mind. So this is the part that has to do with learning to master the mind. So on the bottom level here, we have the sensory world that we're observing. And then the second step is that the mind, we call the meta mind, M-E-T-A, not M-E-T-T-A here in this case. The mind observes the mind observing the world. We begin to recognize, oh, I have this mind that observes the world. So when we start doing meditation, this is something that we begin to be aware of. So we're not just observing the world when we're sitting in meditation. We are observing our mind that's observing the world. Then we become aware, oh, I have this internal supervisor. This supervisor observes my mind that's observing the sensory world. So this internal supervisor has this capacity. First, we have understanding restraint. This is very important. So the internal supervisor knows the difference between what is wholesome and unwholesome and is able to use restraint. So when we have this restraint, we say, oh, my internal supervisor is working. The next level of the internal supervisor, obviously, is to learn how to uproot what it is that is unwholesome. So we don't have unwholesome things continuing to bother us, so we don't have to use restraint all the time. So we know, I have uprooted that. I don't have any more impulses to harm. When that impulse to harm is gone, oh, this is a great relief. Then we can begin to cultivate our loving kindness and compassion, for example. We can begin to cultivate the right view and right intention, etc. We can learn how to do that because our internal supervisor is there. And then the internal supervisor is also very helpful because when we're in meditation, it brings us back to our object of meditation. Continues to do that over and over and over again. And it becomes very strong, but very compassionate and very helpful. Still, we're not yet at the level of mastering, because the master is the one that is able to observe the internal supervisor and keep the internal supervisor on track. I didn't make this system up. This is actually from the 4 divisions, or Bhaga, in the Changwei Shalun. This is the version that is given by Dhammapala, the most advanced of the commentaries on these divisions of the mind. And I have here the Sanskrit and the Chinese for those people who are speak Sanskrit on a regular basis, and maybe Chinese, so that they have that here. So this system is very, very profound. So once a person has this understanding, they say, oh, I can put all of this together. And in the next slide, we can see, well, I go into a little bit more detail that I won't do today about how the Bhagas fit into the Yogacara 3-nature system. But here in the next slide, you can see how the 4 divisions, the 4 Bhagas, connect with the 3 bodies of the Buddha and the 3 nature theory. And then in the next slide, you can see how the insights and 8 consciousnesses and 4 functions of consciousness all fit together. So this is a way of being able to understand how we can begin to, I think in the next slide, actually, yes, this is good. The 4 divisions, right? So this is understanding how to practice to be able to master our mind, is the ability to be able to do this kind of practice. So I want to just advance to the slide that says the wisdom of the transformed 8 consciousnesses. If we can do that, there we go. And to the next slide. After that, we can see that when the mastery of the mind takes place at these different levels, a person is able to attain these different transformations of consciousness. So they're no longer stuck in delusions about the fact that the sense-based world is what controls us. No longer controlled by the sense-based world, the person enters into a stage of cognition with unrestrained activity, unrestricted activity. The restrictions are not necessary because the moral foundation is already there. And then the discriminating mind is also transformed into what's called wondrous observing cognition. A great wondrous joy is experienced by the discriminating mind, instead of the discriminating mind being worried about right and wrong and good and bad and, I like it, I don't like it. Like a child, just able to look at the world with just great wonder and appreciation. And then in the transformation of the seventh consciousness, then the self-cherishing mind, the self-oriented mind is transformed and into what's called the cognition of equality in nature. So this is very profound. We don't have the time today to really discuss this and the higher level of the great mirror wisdom, but just to say that these transformations take place and we begin to see things from a completely different point of view. More charts. So for me, making the charts are part of Wondrous Joy. So I hope that you enjoyed our little talk today. And I want to close by doing the 4 immeasurables, and we can do this together, please. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And may all beings never be separated from this altruistic joy, which is free from suffering. And may all beings dwell in the great equanimity, which is free from attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We're going to turn our program over to the Venerables, who will be leading us in some chanting this morning. And then afterwards, we'll have a few short announcements and then a short break before our study group continues with Right View.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who is leading the chanting this morning. Is Venerable Kongshi going to lead the chanting?
Yes, I will be leading the chanting.
Very good.
The Heart of Prajna Paramita Sutra. Bodhisattva Avalokita Swara. While deeply immersed in Prajna Paramita, clearly perceive the empty nature of the 5 skandhas and transcend all suffering. Sariputra, form is not different from emptiness, and emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. So it is with feeling, conceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Sariputra, all dhammas are empty in character, neither arising nor ceasing, neither impure nor pure, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, in emptiness there is no form, there is no feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, no form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and dhammas, no realm of vision, and so forth, up to no realm of mind consciousness, no ignorance and no ending of ignorance, and so forth, up to no aging and death, and no ending of aging and death. There is no suffering, no cause, no extinction, no path. There is no wisdom and no attainment. There is nothing to be attained by way of prajna paramita. The Bodhisattva's mind is free from hindrances. With no hindrances, there is no fear. Free from all distortion and delusion, ultimate nirvana is reached by way of prajna paramita. Buddhas of the past, present, and future attain the supreme enlightenment. Therefore, prajna paramita is the great powerful mantra, the great enlightening mantra, the supreme and peerless mantra. It can remove all suffering. This is the truth beyond all doubt. And the prajna paramita mantra is spoken thus. Gate, gate, paragate, parasam gate, bodhiswaha. Now let us take the three refuges. I go for refuge, wishing that all sentient beings understand the great way profoundly and bring forth the body mind. I go for refuge, wishing that all sentient beings penetrate the sutra treasury with wisdom as unfathomable as the ocean. I go for refuge, wishing that all sentient beings form together a harmonious assembly without any obstruction whatsoever. Now it is chant the verses of sharing the merit, reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness, give rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tributes to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings. who give guidance and support along the path. May we end all afflictions, so that understanding can arise. The obstacles of unwholesomeness be dissolved, and the fruit of awakening be fully realized.
Not sure.
Thank you for Tan Ye today's talk.
讲大声一点。
Thank you for Tan Ye today's talk. You give a good talk today. Enlighten me. Take care.
We will have a study group after this. But before we have the study group, we will make some announcement.
Yes. Francesca, do you want to make some announcements?
Yes. Thank you. We have decided to continue our On the Path study group into winter retreat bi-weekly as it has been this year. Join us and contact Sherry if you don't have a copy of the book. We're excited, and if Lisa is still here, Kyle, Lisa, Jeff, and Toshita from our DPBS group classes have joined together to start a Saturday discussion group. We're very excited about this on Zoom. It's just a chat, and I will put in the chat notes here a link for a YouTube video that they came up with. That's brilliant. It's great. I enjoyed just watching the YouTube video about announcing this group. So please join us. It is the same link as we're on right now. So we'll have winter services, one link. Also, we will not be having a New Year's Eve blessing ceremony this year. So I think.
Yes, we decided not to have the New Year's Eve because, it's just at midnight. And so by waiting at home, we would be too tired to just, for everyone. And we think that it's a good time for everybody just to stay home and be safe and just do a quiet meditation, or, just do your own sitting at home and be able to be safe. Okay, just have a peaceful New Year.
And we'll be going to our winter schedule. I believe that's on the 19th. Next weekend is our last DPBS class for the semester. And then the weekend after that, we will begin our winter Sunday services with 2 meditations.
Okay, so I think that is it for our Sunday service this morning, and we will have a short break before our study group at what time, Daniel?
Yes, I just want to clarify one thing about the Sunday schedule first, and that is that every other week we are going to be studying, we'll be doing a meditation at 10 o'clock, and then following that, we will have not a talk, but a discussion group after that on the path. And then every other Sunday, my understanding is we will have 2 meditations and then a discussion on the meditation practice itself. This is my understanding. Does that jive with what your understanding is, Francesca?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. I don't want to go off the rails here. And I'm not sure if the first, I think 2 Sundays from now, probably we should continue every other weekend as we have with the On the Path discussion.
Yes.
So we can actually have more time to go through that. And we should be able to make more progress in that over the winter break, I hope. So that's our hope. And Master has said that he's going to pop in to our discussion group. So that'll be good. Yes. So let's, it's 10:45 right now. So let's resume at just 5 minutes to 11, if that's okay. That give people enough time, I hope.